Today, I will narrate to you the third Sarga of the Adi Kavyam. Come with me to the Valmiki Ashram. At the end of the second Sarga, Valmiki Maharshi received a remarkable boon from none other than Brahma, the Srishtikarta, the creator of the universe. Brahma ordained that the Maharshi would simply know every minute detail of the events of the Ramayanam, even the most intimate thoughts that arose within the hearts of its characters would be revealed to Valmiki Maharshi. For us, with our modern conditioning, this can be difficult to comprehend. How could a Maharshi simply know events that had already passed? How could he perceive the inner thoughts of others? It is tempting and perhaps a little lazy to simply say it's divine magic and leave the matter there. But perhaps we should pause for a moment. We live within the fog of our own minds, almost like prisoners confined within invisible walls. Walls constructed by our understanding of Kala or time. We imagine Kala as a river flowing endlessly from the past through the present into the future, the Bhuta, the Vartamana, and the Bhavishya. And in this imagination, we see ourselves as helpless travelers carried by its current. But pause and consider another possibility. What if these three states of time were not flowing at all? What if the past, the present, and the future simply exist, silent and unmoving, like pages already written in a vast cosmic scripture? And it is our consciousness instead, our Chaitanyam, that moves across these pages. If this is so, then perhaps Brahma's boon to Valmiki Maharshi was not the granting of magical knowledge. Perhaps something far more subtle occurred. Perhaps Valmiki Chaitanyam was freed from the limitations of the mind, not by giving him something new, but by rather removing the veil that was already there, the veil that is called Maya. The Upanishads speak of this veil and is often called avidya. They declare that our true nature is hidden not by lack of knowledge but by avidya or ignorance. As the rishis proclaimed, tameva viditva atibhrutyameti, knowing that alone one transcends death, says Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Now, knowledge here does not mean information. It means direct realization. If that is true, then the implication is profound, because it means that the state attained by Valmiki Maharshi is not exclusive to him. It is a possibility that exists within you, within me, and every human being or Jivatman. Perhaps all that stands between us and that realization is simply our avidya. So I ask you, do you still think that you know Ramayana? Or do you merely believe that you know it? Because the moment we settle for belief, inquiry stops. Belief can sometimes become the end of exploration, but true knowing depends something deeper. The Upanishads point towards this deeper state in many ways. One of their most striking declarations is this: Neha nanasti kinchana. In truth, there is no multiplicity here, says Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad. When the mind dissolves its divisions, the knower and the known are no longer separate. There is another profound insight here. When the observer observes the observed completely. When the process of observation becomes total and undivided, something extraordinary happens. The observer and the observed cease to stand apart. The subject and the object dissolve into unison. And that word, unison, is not very far from another sacred word, yoga. Now, only in that state can it truly be said, "Now I know." This is the wisdom expressed in one of the most profound declarations of the Upanishads that said, "Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati." The knower of Brahman becomes the Brahman, says Mundaka Upanishad. And it is from this unfathomable realization that the Maharshis of antiquity proclaimed, "Aham Brahmasmi," I am that Brahman. Such is the lofty spirit in which I invite you to walk with me through this ancient poem, the Adikavyam, the Vedopa Brahmanam, or the Ramayanam. As we journey through this enchanting tale, listen, but not merely with your mind, but with your entire being. Transcend the fog of your thought. Listen with your heart. Listen with your Chaitanyam. Listen to me, with me, to this eternal poem, the Adikavyam. In this third Sarga, Valmiki Maharshi briefly recounts the entire Ramayanam in a concise form, not in full detail, but as a luminous summary of the great epic that is about to unfold. And he begins thus by saying, "Shrutva vastu samagram tad dharmartha sahitam hitam vyaktamanveshate bhuyo yat vrittam tasya dhimataha upasprushhodakam samyangamunihi sthitva krutanjalihi prachinagreshu darbheshu dharmenan veshate gatim Rama Lakshmana Sita bhi Ragya Dasharathena cha Sabharyena Sarashtrena Yat Praptam Tatra Tatvataha Hasitam Bhashitam Chaiva Gatiryavaccha Cheshtitam Tat Sarvam Dharma Viryena Yathavat Samprashyati Stri Trutiyena cha Tatha Yat Praptam Charatavane Satyasandhena Ramena Tat Sarvam Chanva Vaikshata Tataha Pashyati Dharmatma Tat Sarvam Yogamastitaha Pura Yat Tatra Nivruttam Pana Vamalakam Yatha Tat Sarvam Tatvato Društva Dharmena Samahamatihi Abhiramasya Ramasya Tat Sarvam Kartumudhyataha Kamartha Gunasanyuktam Dharmartha Guna Vistaram Samudriva Ratnadhayam Sarvashruti Manoharam Sayatha Katitam Purvam Naradena Mahatmana Raghuvamshasya Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Munihi Janma Ramasya Sumahad Viryam Sarvanukulatam Lokasya Priyatam Kshantam Saumyatam Satyashilatam Nana Chitraha Kataschanya Vishwamitra Sahayane Janakyascha Vivahamcha Danushascha Vibhedanam Rama Rama Vivadamcha Gunan Dasharatestata Tathabhishekam Ramasya Kaikaya Dushtabhavatam Vidyatam cha Abhishekasya Ramasya cha Vivasanam Ragyah Shokam Vilapam cha Paralokasya Chashrayam Prakrutinam Vishadam cha Prakrutinam Visarjanam Nishadadipati Samvadam Sutopavartanam Tatha Gangayaschapi Samtaram Bharadvajasya Darshanam Bharadvaja Abhyanugyanat Chitrakutasya Darshanam Vastu Karma Nivesham cha Bharatagamanam Tatha Prasadanam cha Ramasya Pituscha Salilakriyam
पादुकाग्रयाभिषेकं च नन्दिग्रामनिवासनं दण्डकारण्यगमनं विराधस्य वधं तथा।
दर्शनं शरभङ्गस्य सुतीक्ष्णेन समागमम् अनुसूयमाख्यां च अङ्गरागस्य चार्पणम्। दर्शनं चाप्यगस्तस्य धनुषो ग्रहणं तथा शूर्पणख्याश्च संवादं विरूपकरणं तथा। वधं खरत्रिशूरसोरुत्थानं रावणस्य च मारीचस्य वधं चैव वैदेह्या हरणं तथा। राघवस्य विलापं च गृध्रराजानिबर्हणं कबन्धदर्शनं चैव पम्प्याश्चापि दर्शनम्। शबरीदर्शनं चैव फलमूलाशनं तथा प्रलापं चैव पम्पायां हनुमच्छरणं तथा। ऋष्यमूकस्य गमनं सुग्रीवेण समागमं प्रत्योत्पादनं सख्यं वालुसुग्रीवविग्रहम्। वालिप्रमथनं चैव सुग्रीवप्रतिपादनं ताराविलापं समयं वर्षरात्रानिवासनम्। कोपं राघवसिंहस्य बलानाम् उपसङ्ग्रहं दिशः प्रस्थापनं चैव पृथिव्याश्च निवेदनम्। अङ्गुलीयकदानं च वृक्षस्य विलदर्शनं प्रायोपवेशनं चैव सम्पातेश्चापि दर्शनम्। पर्वतारोहणं चैव सागरस्यापि लङ्घनं समुद्रवचनाच्चैव मैनाकस्य च दर्शनम्। राक्षसीतर्जनं चैव छायाग्राहस्य दर्शनं सिंहिकायाश्च निधनं लङ्कामालयदर्शनम्। रात्रौ लङ्काप्रवेशं च एकस्यापि विचिन्तनम् आपानभूमिगमनम् अवरोधस्य दर्शनम्। दर्शनं रावणस्यापि पुष्पकस्य च दर्शनम् अशोकवनिकायानं सीतायाश्चापि दर्शनम्। अभिज्ञानप्रदानं च सीतायाश्चापि भाषणं राक्षसीतर्जनं चैव त्रिजटास्वप्नदर्शनम्। मणिप्रदानं सीताया वृक्षभङ्गं तथैव च राक्षसीविद्रवं चैव किङ्कराणां निबर्हणम्। ग्रहणं वायुसूनोश्च लङ्कादाहविघर्जनं प्रतिप्लवनमेवाथ मधूनां हरणं तथा। राघवाश्वासनं चैव मणिनिर्यातनं तथा सङ्गमं च समुद्रेण नलसेतोश्च बन्धनम्। प्रतारं च समुद्रस्य रात्रौ लङ्कावरोधनं विभीषणेन संसर्गं वधोपायनिवेदनम्। कुम्भकर्णस्य निधनं मेघनादनिबर्हणं रावणस्य विनाशं च सीतावाप्तिमरेः पुरे। विभीषणाभिषेकं च पुष्पकस्य च दर्शनम् अयोध्यायाश्च गमनं भरद्वाजसमागमम्। प्रेषणं वायुपुत्रस्य भरतेन समागमं रामाभिषेकाभ्युदयं सर्वसैन्यविसर्जनं स्वराष्ट्रार्जनं चैव वैदेह्याश्च विसर्जनम्। अनागतं च यत्किञ्चित् रामस्य वसुधातले तच्चकारोत्तरे काव्ये वाल्मीकिर्भगवान् ऋषिः। Narada Maharshi had narrated to Valmiki the Sankshepa Ramayanam, a concise essence of the great story. Within it were contained the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. And thus, for the first time, the Ramayanam had been spoken. Narada described not merely events, but actions performed without attachment to their fruits, karma untouched by karmaphalam. Thereafter, Valmiki Maharshi, endowed with a pure and refined intellect, and supported by his yogic realization, turned inward. Desiring to know the entirety of these events directly, he prepared himself. Facing the east, seated upon the Kusha Dharma and following the sacred discipline, he performed his achamanam, and with folded hands and a mind stilled in samadhi, Valmiki Maharshi did not imagine the Ramayanam. He beheld it. He watched it. Through his yogic vision, he witnessed all the events as they truly unfolded. He saw Sri Rama. He saw Lakshmana and Sita, King Dashrath and his queens. He saw their joy, their words, their lives in Ayodhya. Nothing was hidden. All of this he realized directly. He beheld Rama's journey into the forest, his life alongside Sita and Lakshmana. He saw their every endeavor, every movement, every moment. And having thus directly realized the entire story, the Maharshi began shaping it into the most enchanting Adikavyam. Guided by the earlier narration of Narada Maharshi, and rooted in his own realization, this composition became flawless in grammar, vast in meaning, and the very essence of all the Shrutis. It possessed the power to enchant the chittam of all who listen. Valmiki Maharshi then described the birth of Sri Rama, his various gunas, his valor, his compassion, his humility, and his unwavering truthfulness. He narrated Rama's journey with Vishwamitra Maharshi, all the wondrous deeds they performed, the breaking of the great vow, and the marriage to Sita, and along with it, of course, the marriages of Lakshmana, Bharata, and Shatrughna as well. He described the encounter with Parashurama, the virtues of Rama, the rise of Kaikeyi's demands, and the obstruction of the coronation, Rama's exile into the forest, Dasharatha's anguish, and his eventual departure, the grief of Ayodhya's citizens who followed Rama but were gently left behind. He saw Rama's journey into the deeper forests, the meeting with Nishadha, the sending of Sumantra back to Ayodhya, crossing the Ganga, meeting with Bharadvaj Maharshi, and then residing at the Chitrakuta. He witnessed Bharat's arrival, his plea to Rama, Rama's firm adherence to Dharma, the offering of Jalanjali to Dasharatha, and Bharata's profound act, the Paduka Pattabhishekam, placing Rama's sandals upon the throne, whilst he himself ruled from Nandigrama in complete devotion. Then unfolded the entry into Dandakaranyam, the slaying of the Viradha, encounters with the great Maharshis like Sharabhanga and Sutikshna, Sita's time in Atri Maharshi's ashram, and the gifts she received from Anasuya, the meeting with Agastya Maharshi, and the receiving of the Vishnu Dhanush. And then came the turning tide, Shurpanaka's arrival, Lakshmana's punishment, the battle with Kara, Dushana, and Trishiras, and their destruction, the provocation of Ravana, the slaying of Maricha, and of course the abduction of Sita. Valmiki saw all of this. He saw Rama's grief, the fall of Jatayu, the encounter with Gabandha, the path to Pampasarovaram, and the devotion of Sabri. Then the meeting with Hanuma, the alliance with Sugriva, the fall of Vali, Tara's grief, Sugriva's coronation, and the vow to search for Sita. He saw the passing of the rainy season, Rama's patience, and later his anger, the mobilization of the Vanara forces, the giving of the ring to Hanuman, then unfolded one of the greatest leaps, Hanuman's ascent from the Mahendra mountain, his crossing of the ocean, his encounter with the Mainaka, and the slaying of Simhika. Valmiki Maharshi then saw in Lanka Hanuman entering the city silently, Hanuman seeing Ravana, seeing the Pushpak Vimana, and finally Hanuman seeing Sita in the Ashoka Vatika. In Sita's presence, Hanuman delivered Rama's message to her. He received Sita's token, witnessed her sorrow, destroyed the Ashoka Vatika, was captured and stood in Ravana's court. Then he burned Lanka and returned. The Vanaras rejoiced, Rama received Sita's ornament, and then the march to Lanka began. A bridge was built across the ocean. Vibhishana sought refuge with Rama and revealed all of Ravana's secrets. And then came the great war. Kumbhakarna fell, Meghnad fell, and finally Ravana fell. Rama was reunited with Sita. Vibhishan was crowned as the king of Lanka, and upon the Pushpak Vimana, Rama began his return to Ayodhya. He met with Bharadvaj Maharshi once more. Hanuman reached ahead, and soon Rama's Pattabhishekam was celebrated in Ayodhya. Rama ruled, bringing joy to all, and yet to uphold Dharma for his people, he even parted from Sita. All of these events Valmiki Maharshi directly realized, and then he gave them to the world as the Adikavya. Not imagined, not composed, but seen, realized, and then revealed.